life's hard. Like it's nice to have some advice that's weathered the ages, right?
Yeah.
Well, why? Yeah, like why do all these lottery winners? Why do we always hear that their lives end in disaster?
Yeah.
It's because they weren't good at handling the resources they had before they won the lottery. Having more resources
doesn't
is
help.
not going to solve your problem, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm lousy at managing resources. If only I had a ton of them, then I'd really be bad at life.
Imagine doing that, like as a a business owner. You go to an investor. You're like, well, I'm really, really bad at at running my business.
Yeah.
But if you would just give me $100,000, then I would just be better at managing.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Why would I do that?
Yeah. Welcome to Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. I'm Timothy.
And I'm Caleb.
And you're listening to Bible Discussions, the forum where we explore biblical topics that are relevant to your life. Today we are continuing our series on the 30 sayings of the wise. And today, in our episode, we're going to look at saying number 16, listen to your parents. So let's start by reading that in Proverbs 23, verses 22 through 25.
Listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Buy the truth and do not sell it. Wisdom, instruction, and insight as well. The father of a righteous child has great joy. A man who fathers a wise son rejoices in him. May your father and mother rejoice. May she who gave you birth be joyful.
So some of these sayings we're getting into recently are kind of repetitive, actually, of some of the other sayings that we've studied, and also of the commandments, in this case, the fifth commandment about honoring your parents, right?
Yeah. I think it's interesting here where he says, honor your father who gave you life, and by implication, your mother too, right? Who also gave you life. If we go back to the commandment series, one of the things I really got caught up on was the ordering there. Like, I feel like most of us would jump straight to not murdering, right? But God puts honoring your parents first, because it's like, why do you even value life in the first place to not murder somebody?
Yeah.
And it couches it in that context.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we all know the commandment, right? Especially if we listen to Biblocus, because we've covered it, in our 10 Commandment series, and also it's come up several other occasions. Now, we'll just read it again. In Exodus 20, verse 12, it says, honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. So God had 10 non-negotiable priority rules that he wanted us to live by. And other than the ones related to himself, this is the first one related to other people, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's interesting. Of course, there's the promise, right? Like Paul says, it's the first command with a promise that there's a promise of long life for honoring your parents.
Yes.
But it doesn't expound on why, right? So why do we think that may be?
Well, I mean, there is sort of an implicit understanding, right? That, as you mentioned earlier, as our parents, they gave us life. And so our relationship with them is all bound up in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
The promise is about life in the commandment. And so when we honor them, we get longer life.
It makes me think of Esau, right? He despises his birthright, right? So he loses it. He's the firstborn, but he's not the line that Jesus is going to come through, that the Messiah comes through, that passes to Jacob.
Yeah.
And if the same thing, if you despise your parents who gave you life, well, you're apparently not valuing your life very much either.
Yeah. Well, and where the commandment, like you said, didn't explicitly tell us why, this saying of the wise sort of does, because it ties together this concept of, honoring your parents with the next little section in it when it talks about buying the truth, not selling it, storing up wisdom and insight and instruction. Obviously, when we think of parents, we think of instruction, right? Because when we're young, your parents give you plenty of instruction. And even when they're older, sometimes they need some anyway. But but our parents have wisdom that we need when we're young, because we don't have any at first. And so this saying of the wise is like telling us, well, we learn from our parents that life isn't the only thing that they gave us. They have this other treasure of wisdom to share with
Hmm.
us, right?
Yeah, and that has to be done deliberately, right? Like that's why the Shema, why we keep going back to the Shema. It's kind of the impetus for starting the channel,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And I just came across a quote this morning, and we didn't even have time to put it in the notes, from Thomas Paine in his book Common Sense.
And Caleb's our official Biblocus historian,
Right.
so
Yeah.
he would know from American history the important things that are related to this passage.
Right. It's from long and careful study, and it's not because it was a quote on a loading screen of a historical video game that I was playing.
Oh, that's good. I
uh,
expressly forbid him to play, would not honor me if he was playing video games this morning.
I actually I wasn't playing it this morning. I just thought of the quote from the game.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah. Um, anyway, he says, when considering posterity, we must remember that virtue is not hereditary, right? And I think that's something like you look at kind of the way our culture goes. Like, I think we brought this up a couple weeks ago, I think, with Richard Dawkins, right? Saying he wants to live in a Christian culture. He wants people
Cultural
to,
Christian.
yeah, he wants people to celebrate Christmas again and like go to church and uphold Christian values. He just doesn't want to believe in any of it. It's like, oh, well, it's not just going to happen by accident, you know. If nobody teaches their kids that stuff, it will all go away. So
Yeah, yeah. So this is a lot like some of the other episodes we've done recently. The parents have to be intentional about teaching the
mhm.
kids, and then the kids will reflect their parents, right?
Yeah,
And you have to spend time together, like we talked about a couple episodes ago. Um, so if now here's the part where it depends on the kid, right? Because in this one it says, if we listen to our fathers, then we'll get wisdom from them.
yeah,
And if we respect our mothers, or as the saying said, if we do not despise them, well, I mean that's a way of saying respect them,
hmm
right? Then we'll learn from them too. And we learned all that in, like I said, in episode 65. I think that this is episode 70. I think so. 5 episodes ago, in saying number 11, we talked about that. So
yeah. Or is it apply your heart to instruction, right?
yeah, hmm,
Yeah,
yeah, and your ears to the words of knowledge. You have to actually try, and that wasn't speaking of children in particular at that moment, but this one is
hmm
listen to your father, right?
So it ends up being a two part, like this passing on of wisdom, the Shema, and so
Hmm.
forth, as we've kind of harped on a lot recently. It There's two roles to play. I think I mentioned as well at some point that thing that I learned in some childhood psychology class that I took, where they said the parents only account for about like 1/3 of the child's personality when they grow up. I don't know. I have no idea how they measure that, but it does kind of make sense, right? Like you're not going to have total control over the kid.
Hmm.
So you have to do right by the child, but then the kid also has to do the right thing in being obedient and pursuing virtue on their own, especially the older they get. You know,
Yeah.
that relationship really just becomes entirely voluntary on the part of the child or the adult as they become.
Yeah, but even as I think in our very first episode, episode 0, one of the very first topics we brought up was, if I'm not happy with your generation, I don't need to blame your generation. I need
Right.
to blame
Well,
mine.
and it also doesn't help any. Like you can sit on the porch and complain about the youngins and nothing will be accomplished. So you might as well figure out what you can take responsibility for and do something about it.
Yeah. Even if the parents practice the Shema, the children might not listen. And so this
Yeah.
whole cycle breaks down. But it starts with the parents, and they're our primary source. And that's kind of the way this saying is written, right? It says, well, okay, listen to your parents. And then it's like, go out and buy all these other things. It's kind of like there's a progression in there. Your parents aren't going to be the only source, like you said, maybe a third of what you learn and what you know and who you are kind of comes from your parents. And you have other, you know,
You have other mentors
yeah,
and peers and the culture all
yeah,
have
hmm,
an effect on you. One thing that I think about a lot now is you are what you read, or as we nowadays, what you listen to. podcasts and stuff.
You're a cell phone.
Yeah, but you I mean, who you read, like what authors.
I know what you meant.
Yeah, you're reading. That's why I'm basically a walking Chesterton quoter.
Well, and so this says, buy truth and do not sell it. Wisdom and instruction and insight as well, right? So it's like your parents are giving it to you for free when you're growing up, and that's why you resent it, right?
Yeah,
It's like, I don't want that. That's what you want me to have. You're giving it to me. It must be bad.
it's like broccoli and cookies.
Yeah, which one? Which one do I want?
Everything that they want me to have is what I don't want.
Yeah, and I want what they won't let me have. They put up on a high shelf I can't reach.
And it's the same thing with advice.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't really change when you grow up. Everybody loves unsolicited advice, right?
Yeah, giving it, sure, not receiving it. Yeah, so that's exactly right. So this is saying and we've talked about this in other episodes recently too, that it's about attitude. It's about the attitude you have about things. And so if your attitude towards your parents is bad, then you're not going to take the download from them.
Yeah.
And probably what God was trying to do with the 10 Commandments, like telling you honor your parents, is trying to help you have a better attitude. If you know it's wrong, like honor your parents. Not honoring them is wrong. And so that would include not listening to them, right? And as this one says, don't despise your mother, which sounds anti-American. At least it did when I was a kid. Now, I don't know. Motherhood is like derided almost. Like, it'd be much better for a woman to go out and have an exciting, fulfilling career than to be a mom.
Yeah, that's
so there's a despising of the actual position.
I mean, that's all these relationships are at the core of humanity and society. The family relationships. And I just thought of something with that whole language there of despising or not despising the mother. A little while ago, I was learning about the kind of like the historic liturgy, the historic worship of the church, and you had like prayers for certain times of the day. Like matins is a morning prayer, and part of one of the things that's been used often in a matins service is the Te Deum, which is basically composed. It's more poetry. It's not really directly drawn from any scripture, but there's one part in there that says, it's addressed to God, right? And when you took upon yourself to deliver man, you did not despise the womb of the virgin, which is interesting, right? And it's like, why would you phrase it that way? Why would he despise her? He made her, right? And I wonder if they were reading that.
Reading this
that would be his mother, right? So why would
and
maybe that's part of the inspiration there.
Yeah.
But it certainly, I think we can look to and we're going to here in a little bit, look to Jesus and his respect for his parents as a model to draw us back to that.
Yeah, when it's interesting wording when it says buy them, don't sell them. It's kind of like,
by the wisdom.
Yeah.
Buy wisdom and don't sell it.
Yeah, it's kind of like Esau, right? Like he had a birthright.
Sold his birthright.
He could continue to be blessed by it and increase.
We should have put that in.
Use
here.
it as a resource and just sell it.
We just came up with this right now. The whole Esau thing. We referenced him twice. Yeah. We should have read it, but that'll be or I guess about in the middle of Genesis.
Yeah.
I don't know what chapter, but
I think buying all these things is something that pleases both God and our parents.
Well, and the other thing you're talking about free advice, like you don't tend to appreciate something when it's free. Compared to when you have to sacrifice something, work for it.
Yeah. It's not really saying go out and buy them. Like, hey, Caleb, I'll give you $50 if you tell me something wise, right? Like it's saying value them, right? Don't.
This is going to be a ripoff for you.
$50, Caleb.
All right. Give me the $50. Don't pay people for wisdom.
Wow. That's actually pretty good advice. I got way better value out of that exchange than I realized.
Well, there's more where that came from.
All right. So we also saw this same thing, right, in episode 67, saying number 13. In Proverbs 23:15, it said, "My son, if your heart is wise, then my heart will be glad indeed."
Yeah.
And so anytime that we pursue these things, then that's pleasing to God. It's pleasing to our parents.
Mhm.
It's kind of like fulfilling
Yeah, I
the
think
10 Commandments.
one of our biggest temptations these days, and especially if you want to talk about, well, what exactly have the last couple of generations in the West done wrong? Because certainly most of them didn't wake up and just say, "I'd like to ruin everything, just tear down our society, screw over my kids." And uh, but I think valuing comfort or safety or happiness more than virtue is probably the chief mistake, right? How many people say, "I just want my kids to be happy. I just want them to
Mhm.
be successful or whatever," and it's like, well, those would be good blessings as well, but God didn't give you a child and say, make sure you teach them how to invest smartly and build a strong, economic portfolio. Like,
Well, why? Yeah, like why do all these lottery winners? Why do we always hear that their lives end in disaster?
yeah,
It's because they weren't good at handling the resources they had before they won the lottery. Having more
yeah,
resources
doesn't
is
help.
not going to solve your problem, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm lousy at managing resources. If only I had a ton of them, then I'd really be bad at life.
imagine doing that like as a business owner. You go to an investor. You're like, well, I'm really really bad at at running my business.
Yeah,
But if you would just give me $100,000, then I would just be better at managing.
yeah.
It's like,
It's
what? Why would
no.
I do that?
Yeah. So that's kind of what this is saying. Look, you need to get your priorities. You need to figure out how to manage resources, and the most important resources in life are not monetary.
Yeah,
They're the virtues, the things you were
yeah.
speaking of a minute ago.
Uh, that's the thing that makes a father or mother's heart glad, especially in their old age,
Yeah.
is that their children turn out virtuous.
Yeah.
You'd rather you know, they be virtuous and impoverished than the wealthiest guy in the world and abusing everybody around them.
Hmm.
That will not, you're not going to rest easy on your deathbed if that were the type of child you reared.
Yeah. I mean, think of it as, the parent who is being cared for by their children in their old age, as opposed to the one who's sitting around in a nursing home by themselves, wondering what happened to their kids.
I thought of that too with that
Hmm.
whole "don't despise your mother when she's old." Like
Right.
that's like we have such a. This is actually interesting to think about. We have an aging populace all across the West, right?
Hmm.
In the early church, the church had to go save infants that were left out to exposure.
Yeah.
The Greeks and Romans or the Gentiles around them would be having uh, like a deformed kid or maybe a girl, and they already had a bunch of kids. They just wanted a boy or whatever, and they would just leave them out for the wolves or exposure to take care of them. And the church would save them and adopt them and raise them. And of course, they were accused for oh, these freaks. What do they want all these kids for? And then they have some sort of ritual where they eat human flesh, I think. So they're eating these babies. And it's like
Yeah.
I think now
Yeah.
we're gonna be called to probably the opposite in our culture is to care for the elderly because
Yeah.
they're we're gonna have an imbalanced populace in that
Yeah.
way.
We're already great at taking care of like unborn babies and stuff
Oh
like that.
yeah,
Yeah, we're doing a real good
yeah.
job.
Well, maybe
No,
yeah. I
sorry,
mean, we're always called to
but
both, but
yeah. Um,
yeah.
well, I don't know if I've talked to you much about this, but like when I was in college at UT, I went to the Christian Student Center, and I was the religious vice president, or I was president, or whatever. And so I started this program called Service on Saturdays, or SOS. And what I did is I called all the local churches affiliated with our ministry um, in Knoxville, and I asked them for their shut-in list, like people we could go visit. And then I would get college students on Saturday mornings to go around and visit with these people, whether they were in nursing homes or in their houses and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And so there was this one lady who, when I called the church, they were like, "Well, yeah, we got somebody you really need help. She's a heart patient, and she has to go to therapy all the time for her heart. And then she works. She has like two jobs or whatever. She works like all day from 5 in the morning to 5 at night, and then
Wow.
she's cutting her own grass. And so they were like, if you could help her cut her grass, that would really be great, So I was like, oh yeah, I can get college students to go over there and do that. So me and another guy, we called her up, and she gave us a time to come over and cut her grass, and so we went over there and help her out. And One funny thing about it was I was cutting the backyard. My buddy Tommy was cutting the front, and I was cutting around this evergreen tree, and I got swarmed on by yellow jackets, and I go running for my life around to the front of the house, and
That's hilarious.
yeah, Tommy's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Yellow jackets," and so she comes busting out the front door laughing. She's like, "Oh, man, those ground bees sure did get after you," and I was like, "Yeah, they did," and she goes, "Didn't you notice the grass was taller? I haven't been cutting around that tree because of the ground bees." And I was like, "No, you didn't mention that to me." and she said, "Well, I put a cinder block over one of their holes." And I was like, "Oh, they've got more than one." And so yeah, but I was just like having to, say I'm here honoring this woman. but it turns out what happened was we cut her grass twice, and she had 3 sons that lived here
Oh
locally.
man.
And they were so shamed by us cutting her grass that they started cutting her grass for her. So she told us we didn't have to come anymore. So, that turns out to be the biggest blessing of all, is not just helping her cut her grass,
probably
but
getting her kids involved. Yeah.
yeah. And we didn't even do it on purpose. It
Yeah.
just happened naturally. So that was cool. So, honoring your parents, honoring just parents in general, honoring the elderly, as you were saying, is something that raises the whole society, I think. All right. So speaking of the value of wisdom and going out and buying it, making that your priority, Caleb, this reminded you of Matthew 13:44-46.
Yeah. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it. That language sounds so similar to me. It's like he hides the treasure and buys it,
Yeah.
Don't sell it. It's like
Yeah.
it's worth everything to him and willing to sacrifice for it.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing more valuable than the knowledge of Jesus Christ in your life, right? And when he learns that, he goes out and gives everything for it. So
Yeah.
it's actually kind of modeled on the Christ story, I guess. Giving everything, for the cause. I mean, Christ.
Yeah. I mean, that's how Christ treats us. And we're,
Yeah.
when we were yet sinners,
Yeah.
he found like a soiled diaper in a field and it was like, oh, I
And
gotta
died for it.
buy this whole field.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And he calls on us to take up our cross and follow him.
Yeah.
So we're supposed to have the same level of sacrificial giving, for people that we don't even necessarily have a relationship with. We just have to innately value them because they're invaluable to God.
hmm
So that's that famous question, like, what would you trade for your soul, right? That Jesus asked. Anyway, there should be nothing we would trade for it. Just like this old saying in the Proverbs is saying, don't sell anything except to trade it for wisdom. Don't sell the wisdom. Don't sell the good things you have. So, and one of the things that you liked about this verse is it mentioned joy.
Yeah, because it says he went and bought the field in his joy, right? And Solomon keeps saying that in these, and I know we've said, some of these sayings are pretty similar, but in saying 13, my son, if your heart is wise, then my heart will be glad indeed, right? And then in this week's saying, we've also seen the same thing, that this is what brings joy to especially parents in their old age, is when this brings fruit.
Yeah. That's a good connection. I also thought of, thinking of Jesus and parenting and parents, made me think of Luke 2, verses 41-52, which is early in Jesus' life. It says, every year Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up to the festival according to the custom. After the festival was over, while his parents were returning home, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but they were unaware of it. Thinking he was in their company, they traveled on for a day. Then they began looking for him among their relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they went back to Jerusalem to look for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. His mother said to him, "Son, Why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you." "Why were you searching for me?" he asked. "Didn't you know I had to be in my father's house?" But they did not understand what he was saying to them. Then he went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. But his mother treasured all these things in her heart. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men.
That's another interesting thing that's been lost like today in our culture, like not knowing where your kids are but not worrying about it. You know,
Yeah.
they just travel for a whole day because they're like, well, he's with cousins or the neighbors or something. Like
Yeah.
he's in their group, you know,
Oh,
talking to
yeah.
their kids. And it's like back in the day, you know, like when you were growing up, you
Hmm.
ran around the whole neighborhood
Yeah,
with
we did.
about all your friends, and
We were on
we
bikes.
did
We
that a
went
little
everywhere.
bit when we were kids, and now it's like I don't know if anybody does that. Like everyone's just in their houses watching TV or whatever.
You
And
got Life 360. They're tracking them, sitting,
yeah,
watching, eating
well,
popcorn, watching
they
TV.
track. Yeah, they can track them. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I just mean like the culture,
Yeah.
the
Hmm. Yeah.
relationship there, like
Hmm.
that. You know, idea it takes a village to raise a kid. It's like how many of your neighbors do you have much of a relationship with at all? Much less one where
Yeah.
you know you're comfortable with them watching your kid. If
Yeah.
they're down the street or up the other street, you don't worry about it. But we don't have that kind of trust, that kind of cohesion anymore as a society.
Yeah. You have to
And
cultivate it for sure in your neighborhood. You have to be an active role in
yeah,
doing that. I see this transition in Jesus here. It says he's 12 years old, but I think we don't have a good context for what that means. That'd be like being 18 now,
yeah,
or 21. I mean, it's like in their day, 12 years old was like, why aren't you out working?
yeah,
Um,
just about anyway.
yeah, it's close. So
Usually,
because puberty, I mean,
yeah,
right around
puberty would be
puberty,
when they
13, 12, 13, who knows what it was back then, but
probably a couple years later.
yeah,
We're early now because
they
we're all
say that.
fat.
Well,
It's
because
based on your body weight,
yeah,
apparently,
or maybe because of hormones that they feed, beef
or
and chicken
or
and stuff
that.
like that.
Yeah,
But at any rate, you can see this transition that's taking place here between Jesus as a young person and Jesus as an adult. And it's kind of like that saying says, like, get from your parents and then go out and buy it, right? So it's like at this point, Jesus is out, you know, sharing, his thoughts with the elders in the temple, and he's participating with them, and he's gaining from them, and he's going back and forth with them. He's out exchanging knowledge with other people and wisdom with other people, other than his parents, and that's kind of what this proverb said to do. Get what you can from your parents, listen to your parents, and then go out and buy it, right?
hmm
So that's kind of the same thing you see in the life of Christ. So
and what happens with to his mother's heart, right? She
yeah,
treasures all these things in her heart. It brings her joy.
yeah, because she sees her son as a wise man.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. Now, we mentioned earlier, we'll mention it twice in one episode, Caleb. You're the official biblical historian, and you found a quote from Ignatius of Antioch in his epistle to the Philadelphians. And this is from chapter 4.
Yeah. So this just to give the context here,
Okay.
he's talking about how um, some of the leaders in the church might forego getting married, kind of like Paul advises, right? It would be good not to, so you can devote yourself more fully to the Lord. But he's listing men of their time that these like leaders that his audience would be familiar with who haven't gotten married. But he also lists a bunch of patriarchs and apostles and other leaders who have gotten married. And he says, "For they entered into these marriages not for the sake of appetite, but out of regard for the propagation of mankind. Fathers, bring up your children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord," which is from Ephesians 6:4, "and teach them the Holy Scriptures, and also trades, that they may not indulge in idleness. Now, the Scripture says, a righteous father educates his children well. His heart shall rejoice in a wise son." And that last part is from our saying today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is interesting. It ties together so many different commands that we've been talking about. I mean, first of all, he says, they're not marrying just because of the sex, right? Just because of appetite,
Mm-hmm.
that physical desire. They're doing it to raise godly children, right? The propagation of mankind, and not even just the biological, right? But also the spiritual propagation of mankind.
Yes.
And how many commands are brought together here, right? Like be fruitful and multiply, impress these commands on your children from the Shema, or even how about Matthew 28? Go and make disciples. Like in a very literal way, they're going to make a new disciple, right?
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
So, and of course, then the Ephesians passage that he quotes and the proverb that he quotes, like everything's coming together there on how we fulfill our role. This is kind of God's role for us
Hmm.
is to do this.
Yeah. It makes it sound a lot more exciting to go out and make disciples. But anyway, sorry. Um, yeah, he also talks about the joy too. Well, because he quotes this passage,
Yeah, rejoice
presumably
in a wise
in
son.
different translation, but he talks about how your heart will rejoice. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of joy in fulfilling these commandments and fulfilling the Shema and all that.
Hmm.
It brings joy to you. It brings joy to the community and to the world, really. So I got another proverb that I thought would be good to talk about. Has a little bit of a different angle to it. Proverbs 14:26 says, "Whoever fears the Lord has a secure fortress, and for their children it will be a refuge." And of course, we've been talking for many weeks about how the fear of the Lord is wisdom, is
Hmm.
knowledge, right? And so I really liked this because you can see the value of a parent's wisdom here. It protects them, right? And that's important because they're protecting you. So
Yeah,
they need to be protected. And then as you get older, it protects you too because they pass it on to you.
it shows you where to go for wisdom, for safety, comfort.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a fulfillment of the promise that's in the commandment. The commandment says, you know, honor your parents, you'll live long. And if you honor your parents by learning from them and gaining wisdom from them, you will live longer because you'll make wise decisions.
Yeah. Again, it gets back to kind of if we took one theme through all of Solomon's sayings here, it's thinking long term instead of short term, right?
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
whoever fears the Lord has a secure fortress, and it'll even protect their children in the future.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
they're not just out to get what they can get for themselves.
Hmm.
They're also planning for their children's security.
Yeah, that's
And
interesting. That reminds me of the way Jordan Peterson breaks down the promise to Abraham. You know,
you
because
have to remind me.
well, he sort of says like the promise to Abraham was, well, if you listen to me and you go off on this adventure, right, then I'll make you I'll make you rich,
Mm,
and then I'll
make you a
give
nation.
you lots of children, and they will be fabulously successful, and the whole world will be made better through your
Hmm.
offspring. And so he's like this multi-generational, like the best way to live your life to have the maximal impact on the world,
Hmm.
is the way that God challenges Abraham to go off on an adventure and trust him, is going to lead to the best possible outcome for not only you but your future generations of you.
Yeah. So again, like we were talking about towards the beginning, where there's sort of two commands sort of in one that become one here, where the duty of the parents to the children and the children to the parents.
Yeah.
If that's upheld, right? If you have godly parents and obedient children, then what happens here? Even when the parents get too old, like you know, when you're like a young parent like me, a young adult, you often find yourself calling your parents, right? You need advice or you gotta haven't encountered this problem before. You've helped me like install new appliances or something, and
Sure.
then eventually there'll be a day where you can't do that anymore. Or I'm
Hmm.
the one coming to to do it for you, and
Yeah.
and that happens to everybody in life, right? And if that is one day when that's gone, if you've prepared me with a biblical understanding, with a relationship with God, then that's where my ultimate security is. And whenever mom and dad are gone, or any other mentors or leaders that you look up to, and because eventually, like we saw in Judges, even the ones like Deborah, who seem morally not to have a lot of faults, they still are going to die. They're still going to fail you, even if they didn't want to. And if your ultimate hope is in God, you'll still be able to take refuge in Him late in your life. So just like the commandment says, why do you honor your father and mother, right? Or what do you get from honoring your father and mother? A long life.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this preservation
Yeah.
of life. It's like built in to God's plan. It's really
You
cool.
won't have the rug pulled out from under you, you know.
Hmm. Yeah. So our parents offer us a great deal, like when we're growing up, free wisdom,
Yeah.
right? I used to tell you boys, like, hey, you got like 20, 21, 22 years on my tab,
You
right?
would
Like,
count it down. It's like every few months we'd have the conversation and it would keep getting shorter.
I was trying to warn you that reality was headed your way. But
And
I
then
was,
one day you got 30 seconds. Get out. No.
I used to tell them, I used to tell the kids, like, you have, this many years on my tab to become an expert at the thing you love the most in the world, and that way you can spend the rest of your life doing it and making a living doing it. So, but that's true. I mean, like parents, that's your job is to, nurture your kids. And then there's a point in time when they transition over and take care of themselves and their own kids. Um, if we listen, we get a great gift back, which is long life.
Hmm.
Not only a long life,
Well,
but an
and all the
enjoyable.
free wisdom.
Yeah, an enjoyable life. So the wise words takeaway from this episode is listen to your parents and enjoy a long and happy life.
Yeah. So the family is the first place we find acceptance and instruction. But where should somebody go if they want to build a family like this? They're starting a family, or maybe their family hasn't upheld this, so they're feeling kind of lost and abandoned.
Yeah, I mean, a great community would be a church family, right?
Yeah.
And most of us too, though, to Caleb's earlier point, already live in a neighborhood. And if you
Yeah.
don't get the time, if you don't get take the time to meet your neighbors, you don't realize what great people they are. Sometimes,
Yeah.
just because their garage door goes down every time their car pulls in doesn't mean you can't like try to, meet them and get to know everybody. I mean, Kimberly and I walk every day, sometimes more than once, and we take our dog with us, and people are out in their yards. You get to meet them. You learn their names. Some of them are walking their dogs, so you walk with them. You get to know them. Those are the things that you can do. Those are the strategies that you can do to transform your own neighborhood and make your own neighborhood kind of a church family. By knowing the people that are there and investing in their lives and them investing back in yours.
Well, in the church, I think ultimately we find, like I was bringing up earlier, but we should look to Jesus for how to treat our parents, right? How to respect our parents. I think ultimately we find all of our fulfillment on these relationships in God, in our church family, and as our relationship to Christ as a bride, as a bridegroom, or as our brother, God as our father, and then our brothers and sisters in the church. That's something that can't really be taken away. Your family could fail you in multiple ways, whether it's their own fault or not. Like an accident takes them from you or something. I think it's often a lot of people will complain when Jesus says, like, whoever doesn't hate his father and mother for my sake, blah, blah, blah. They'll say, well, that sounds mean. It's like, well, maybe you should think about that from the perspective of somebody whose family has really failed them. And it's like, oh, so I'm not just forever, inferior to everybody else who has a good mom or dad or whatever. I can have the same thing in the church and with God. And that's ultimately where we find that fulfillment, I think.
Yes, sir.
And when it comes to like buying wisdom and not selling it, right? You could go to school and be, probably in debt for the rest of your life. But you know who's handing out free wisdom all the time on at least a weekly basis?
Me?
Every single church in your neighborhood. Possibly Biblocus. That the jury's out on that one.
I just meant for you.
Yeah. I mean, the church is like, if you go to any church, they want to help you. They want to teach you about God. Like that's what they're there for. And they don't have any strings attached, So.
Yeah. But again, like you have to make it like this is warning us, similar to some of the other episodes we had recently where it says, guard your heart against something or whatever. This is like telling you have to get the right attitude. You have to value wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Then you'll see that as a great deal.
Yeah.
If you don't value it, then you'll be like, Those churches are always trying to tell everybody how to live their lives. It's like, well, maybe I know somebody who needs some instruction on how to live their
Yeah.
life, right? Like, but you don't have a posture that's willing to accept it, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, the churches are trying to tell you how to live your life based on wisdom that God has handed down through the generations, through His written Word, right, and through the life and times of Jesus Christ and His, sacrifice for us and His resurrection and the promise of resurrection that He offers us. All those things are being offered by churches, not just trying to tell you how to live your life, but life's hard. Like it's nice to have some advice that's weathered the ages, right?
Yeah. And like you're talking about attitude, how receptive you are to learning. Possibly Solomon's most common saying in Proverbs that he says there are certain ones he pretty much says over and over again in different ways. Is the one that goes more or less, a wise man invites correction, but a fool despises it because the wise man's like, oh, I could learn from this, and the fool's like, who are you to tell me how to live my life? It's like,
right. I mean,
where are you going to get with that attitude? You'll never improve.
Well, that's why the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom or instruction, right? Because it's you're understanding that, oh, I have weaknesses and God's smarter than I am. And so I should fear not doing things the way He teaches, because if I do, if I don't do it the way He instructs, then I am headed for a precipice, right? I'm headed for disaster.
Yeah.
So anything else? Okay. Well, he's Caleb and I'm Timothy, and thank you for listening to Bible discussions on Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. Please consider subscribing to our channel to help support our efforts. All scripture quotations, unless otherwise indicated, are taken from the Holy Bible, New International Version, NIV, copyright by Biblica Inc., used by permission of Zondervan, all rights reserved. This program is copyright 2025 by Timothy Klingerman. God bless all of you.